Okay, looks like we are live. I want to thank you all for joining me today. It is August 10th, 5 o'clock, actually a little over 5 o'clock. So I'm sorry, just like 1 or 2 minutes. And I apologize for a little bit of the delay, but we're here now. We are live and you are joining me. And so welcome. For those of us, for those of you joining, do say hello. I want to know who's with me. It doesn't look like we have too many people. We have a few, but not too many. Hopefully more will come. I'm going to get started in about a minute. And today I'm talking about what IELTS writing, primarily what not to do. There are certain things that you should never do in IELTS writing. I'm primarily going to be talking about the essay. Although a lot of these can apply to the other IELTS tasks for general writing task 1, where you have the letter, and for academic task 1, where you have to do a chart analysis. Some of these do, some of them, what I'm talking about, do apply. And so, and these are perhaps the most common mistakes that you should avoid in writing the essay, because a lot of students do this. Now, there are other things that you should be avoid, but these are the most common ones. So we're still waiting for a few more people to come, and hopefully we'll get started in about a minute. But let me tell you about myself. My name is Martin Victor. I am an IDP IELTS certified IELTS trainer. I have over 8 years of experience teaching IELTS, TOEFL, spoken English, and interview preparation. And I've literally helped hundreds of students achieve their goals with those areas. So, and my thing that I really focus on helping with students is my area of expertise is really helping to learn how to speak and write in natural English. So as a native speaker, I live here in India, but I'm from the US. So as a native speaker, I teach my students, and that's including you people here watching, I teach my students how to express yourself in a more natural way. And this is both in speaking and writing. And I see a lot of problems in this with other IELTS tutors. They're not teaching this. And part of this is because they don't learn English in a way that's natural. So I'm here to teach you that. And we have a couple more people. Do say hello to those who've joined us. Now, just so you know, I'm going to have a question and answer periods at the end. So if you have questions, first of all, I ask that you keep your questions specific to the topic. In this case, we're talking about IELTS writing. Second, keep them to the essay. So that's what I ask. Keep your questions to the topic. So about IELTS writing, primarily about the essay. That's really what I'm talking about. I'll talk about other IELTS, other aspects of IELTS as I do other videos. So let's get started. Now, what to avoid for the IELTS essay. These are what I suggest you avoid. And I've done research, and this is what research has shown. So first of all, insufficient and inappropriate paragraphing. Now, I've talked about this last week about paragraphing, proper paragraphing. So, and I really suggest you guys watch that video from last week. Tips for the IELTS writing. Now, so, and then I also encourage you guys to watch my other live sessions as well here on YouTube. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram as well. But in my past 2.5 months of videos, live sessions here on YouTube, they're all talking about how to write the essay, how to write specific essays, how to write the introduction, body paragraphs, and conclusion, how to plan, how to write your essay, and how to understand the prompt. So do that. And also watch my speaking videos as well. Now, again, insufficient, inappropriate paragraphing. Now, I want to go talk about this, and I have some examples to show you what these are, what I mean by insufficient, inappropriate paragraphing. And we'll get those in a bit. Now, the next one is partially addressing the task. And I talked about this to in a certain aspect last week as well, but I'm taking a little bit different direction this one. So, because this is important. So let's move on. Now, the next one is presenting an unclear position. This is important because you are expected to give your position, your main idea, your thesis, your opinion about the topic. No matter what the question, you are supposed to give a thesis for the topic. And a lot of times students don't include a thesis, or they write one that's not very clear. So now the next one is using first and second person speech. Now, this is another one that a lot of students do and get caught up in. And I'll explain this as we go on. Next is spelling errors. And I've talked about this before, spelling errors in my last one. But spelling errors are common and you want to avoid those. Next are using inappropriate memorized language, phrases, cliches, and idioms. Now you might be shocked about idioms. And I'll explain why you shouldn't use idioms, but using inappropriate memorized language, phrases, and cliches, you don't want to do those. You want to avoid those at all costs, including idioms. And I'll explain why later. Now, the final one is using research to support your thesis. I see this all the time with the students. They often use research as an example to support their thesis, but there's a big problem, and you will learn why that is a problem. Okay, now let's move on to our first thing to avoid: inappropriate and insufficient paragraphing. Now, first of all, we have some problems here with this. Now, the first one is no paragraphs are used. This is a problem if you don't use paragraphs, okay? It's a problem, big problem. Now, next is there's no central idea for a paragraph, and that's another problem too, okay? And then underdevelopment. Underdevelopment is another big issue for IELTS essay, because they expect you to develop your ideas, have a sufficient body paragraph to support the idea that you're trying to talk about. And if you have like a one sentence paragraph, that's not going to cut it. So you need to develop. Now let's look at these more closely. Now, there are other things to avoid as well. First of all, you want to avoid using bullet points or using headings, okay? You want to avoid those. Those are not proper essay format. They may be proper for, say, your tests that you take, at the end of the term. I know if I had to use that format. Bullet points certainly are not bullet points are just sentences, and you bullet point them, and they're not. You're not writing an essay there. You're just putting out bullet points. They want to know how well you write, and if you write bullet points, you can't show you're writing that well. And using headings is not appropriate either. This is not like a blog post or a test that you have to write, test answer that you have to write where you have to use headings. So no headings. Neither are used in essays. If you go and look at any academic essay online, you will never see headings. Okay, so let's move on. Now, here's an example of a paragraph, an example of no paragraphing. It's all lumped together. And so what I've shown here in blue, are, what I did was I took an essay that a student wrote and I just clumped the paragraphs together. Now the blue shows where the ideas kind of change. And so it's difficult to understand what this paragraph is talking about because there are several different things that the student is talking about. And when you lump a paragraph together, your paragraphs together, it creates a problem because it's very confusing. It's hard to follow. And so what we want to do is we want to do something like this. Now this is from a task 1 academic, but we have our paragraphs here, okay? And this is the full essay, full writing task. But you can see how each paragraph is devoted to one particular thing. For example, the first paragraph gives a description of what the graph is. Okay. The second paragraph is devoted to the overview. So that's important. And then the next 2 paragraphs are talking about specific data sets. So for instance, the first one is talking about males. The second one is talking about females, women. And so we can see each paragraph is devoted to a single idea. And they're separate. So this is what a good example of proper paragraphing. So now a proper paragraph, when we skip a line, and this is what you want to do. For proper paragraph, you skip a line after you finish a paragraph. This makes the paragraph stand out and makes it easier to read. You can really follow the thought process of the person who wrote this. So that's how you want to handle it. This is the example of proper paragraphing. Now, paragraphing with a paragraph with no central idea. Okay, this is our example. So presently, every other technology has been overruled by computer technology. I'll let you read it for a little bit. Okay. Okay, so you should have read this by now. Now, the problem here is there's no clear main idea. Is it how computers dominate other technologies, or about the computer's ability to store data? It's not really clear. It may look like that the student is trying to give some examples here. And so it's really hard to follow. Now, here's an example of a paragraph with one central idea. I'll go ahead and give you some time to read it. Okay, so now you notice that I have a sentence that the first sentence is underlined. That's the central idea of the paragraph. And so everything that I write really talks about this. For instance, the next line gives an example. Then it starts with another example. Then there's cyberbullying. And then Then we talk about video gaming, people becoming wrapped up in the technologies at the expense of relationships. So, and then it ends with an example of video gaming. So the thing is, the main idea here is the disadvantages of computers in human life. So, and as you can see, it is about, and sorry about that flip to the next slide. You can see the whole paragraph is devoted to one central idea, and that's what's important. A paragraph always has one central idea. Now, I talked about this. I talked about this in my video on how to write a body paragraph, and I recommend that you guys watch that. Okay. Each paragraph always has one central idea. Everything else revolves around that central idea. Okay. Now, here's our example of an underdeveloped idea. So again, I'll give you some time here. So okay, so you probably have read this read this already. Now, there's a couple problems. First of all, there's no clear central idea. It's hard to understand what this paragraph is about. The next thing is underdeveloped. There's no explanation. If the idea is to keep children busy and productive, it really doesn't explain that. So there's no explanations. For instance, how does it make children productive? Especially if the idea is to keep children productive. There's no explanation. And a good body paragraph will have explanation and or description, an example to illustrate, and a conclusion to show how it's related to the thesis. Okay. So again, for more information on how to write a body paragraph, good body paragraph, watch my video on how to write a body paragraph. Sorry, I got distracted there. Now, here's an example of a well-developed body paragraph. So give you guys some time to read this. Okay, so now, as you can see, this has a central idea. It's about international cooperation for dealing with environmental issues. And provides two specific and detailed examples and their global impact. So, and then it ends with a conclusion. This is a good step and shows a commitment to resolve. So that's a good body paragraph. Now, a good body paragraph should have, I would say, at least five sentences. Okay, that will get. You can have more, and it's okay to have more depending on the type of essay that you're writing, the type of body paragraph you need. So more information, go back to my live session about 2 months ago where I talk about how to write a body paragraph. Okay, now let's move on to the next issue. Now, paragraphing tips, okay? Here, using paragraphs with clear and central topic. Somehow I didn't edit this right, sorry about that. Use paragraphs for each idea. This is important. You want to use paragraphs for each idea. Okay. You want to leave a space between each paragraph. And then don't use one sentence paragraphs. Try not to use two sentence paragraphs. This is especially the case in your conclusion and your introduction may be short. They should be around 3 sentences each at the least, okay? So, but never use one sentence paragraphs, okay? Now, for using paragraphs with a clear and central topic, let's talk about that. The essay becomes easier to follow and understand, okay? This is important. When you have a paragraph that's devoted solely to one paragraph, it's easy to follow and understand. Now, let's move on to partially addressing the task. Right, now, you must address all aspects of the task. It's important. If you do not, there are problems. Let's find out. Now, all aspects of the task include the topic, viewpoints, points to discuss, such as advantages and disadvantages, the 2 views that you're asked about, or to talk about problems and solutions. And then, of course, you need to give an opinion about the topic, your thesis. Those are the things that you must address, that you must include in the task, in your essay. If you do not, you will lose points. Now, let's look at this example. In many countries, people now wear Western clothes such as suits and jeans rather than traditional clothing. Why is this the case? Is this a positive or negative development? So here, what do we need to include? What do we need to address? We need to address the topic, wearing Western clothing versus traditional attire. Viewpoints. There's one viewpoint here, Western styles are replacing traditional dress. And then answering both the questions. We need to answer both the questions. Now, our thesis will be based on one of these questions, and that's the second question, okay? So, but we need to make sure that we answer both these questions. So that's what we need to do. Now, let's move on. Having an unclear position. This is important too, okay? This comes about when, under the following circumstances, we do not present a thesis. So when the writer does not write a thesis, or the thesis statement is written in a way that's not very clear. So let's look at this essay prompt, okay? Providing a national system in a country where the unemployed receive a regular payment only encourages people not to seek work and puts an unreasonable strain on the country's financial resources. Discuss this statement and give your opinion. Now, I have some here. Here's our example of an unclear thesis. In my opinion, giving money to unemployed people can be a good move, but it may have some negative consequences. Well, that may seem clear, but it's really not, because it's kind of going one way and then another. It's basically taking both sides. Now, it should be very clear, very straightforward. It should not be talking about both sides. So we have here our example of a clear thesis. Providing unemployment benefits might seem to be a good idea, but it places a heavy burden on the government because it discourages people from looking for work. Very clear, very, there's no questions about it. It takes one side only, and it mentions one side, but it states makes a clear statement about the opinion on that side. Might seem like a good idea, but it's not, but ultimately the statement's implying that it's not. Okay, so we need to have a very clear thesis. It's really important, because if you don't have a clear thesis, then we can't understand, the reader, in this case the examiner, can't understand where you're coming from, okay? Now, the next one here is use of first and second person speech. Now, first person speech is I, me, we, ours, and such. We want to avoid first person speech. Second person speech is you, your, yours, their, them, for instance. We want to avoid that, okay? And the reason why is an essay is academic writing. This means it has to have a formal tone. So how do we avoid this? Well, first of all, first and second person, as I just said, is informal. We don't want to use it. So we need to use third person, he, she, it, they, them. Okay? We need to use those third person. Okay? Now, the tip, a lot of times people use personal examples. And it's okay to use personal examples, but you want to put them in the third person, okay? And you can do it like this. Sometimes here's an example of first person. Sometimes I make decisions based on emotion rather than logic. Now, the correct way would be at times many individuals are prone. Now that makes it general, more general. Many individuals are prone to make a decision based on what they are feeling rather than thinking it through. So we want to take a more general approach with our examples. It's okay to use personal examples from your own life, your family, friends, people you know, okay? But you want to make them sound general, where you're talking about people in general. And so that's what I want to convey here. Now, spelling errors. Now, you have one or two spelling errors, it's not really going to affect your score too much. It might affect it, it might mean the difference between an 8.5 and 9, but if you have too many spelling errors, it's going to affect your band score for lexical resources, which is vocabulary. So here's what you want to do. You want to save 2 minutes at the end for editing. I mentioned this in my last video. Save 2 minutes at the end for editing. So during this time, you can correct all the spelling errors that you make, okay? Now, you want to learn the proper spelling of words. This is important. And you want to pay careful attention to homophones. These are words that are spelled differently, but they sound the same. For instance, we have the following: two, two, and two. All three of those are different words. One is a preposition, one is a number, and the other is a conjunction. Then we have where and where, male and male, plain and plain, heel and heel. So English has a lot of homophones. And so you need to be sure that you understand the differences between the two. And so this is part, it makes studying homophones part of your vocabulary building, okay? So know the differences. So what I suggest for that is, when you learn a new word, see if it has a homophone. If it doesn't, good. If it's not, then study that homophone. All right, now moving on. Inappropriate memorized language. These are phrases, cliches, and idioms. And I think my next video is going to be more about this, because I see a lot of phrases. Over the years, I've seen students use a lot of really strange phrases, such as chunks of masses, to talk about people in general, which is not used. It doesn't even sound natural. I mean, if you really think about it, who in their right mind would refer to people as chunks of masses? It doesn't make a lot of sense. But let's move on. So here, use your own words. Don't use memorized language. Use your own words. Okay, that's important. Don't use memorized phrases such as these: controversial or hot topic. You want to stay away from those. So you can say, maybe, you know, be creative. You can say, this is a heated, you know, this is an interesting debate or a lively debate, for instance. Two-edged sword, double-edged sword, two sides of a coin. We don't want to use this either. This is also used too often. Be creative with your words. So, you know, you can say, you don't have to, you know, you don't have to use these phrases. Now, in a nutshell, we want to avoid in a nutshell. A lot of students use this in their conclusion. But in a nutshell is too informal. It's informal. We want to avoid using informal phrases in speech. Remember, the essay is academic writing, and so we want to avoid informal speech. Then I pen down by saying, first of all, I is informal. We want, and I pen down by saying, that is probably, that may have been used like over 100 years ago. May not be used, that's no longer in usage, okay? We want to avoid that type of phrase. There are pros and cons. That's another one that's used, especially when we say advantages and disadvantages. And pros and cons is more informal. So, you know, you can say there are several benefits as well as problems, for instance, when you're talking, instead of saying pros and cons, rather than, you know, when you want to talk about there are disadvantages and disadvantages. This essay will discuss, again, that's overused and it really doesn't say much. Now, so you want to avoid that. Reasons why I hold this view. Again, this is something that is, it may seem formal, but it's not. And that's because it's using first person, you know. So you want to make it, you want to write a more formal style of thesis, such as it is suggested that, whatever the case may be. Now, for how to write a thesis, I really suggest you watch the video on how to write an introduction, because I go into talking about how to write. That's where you write your thesis. You're writing your introduction and your conclusion. So watch that video, where to write an introduction. And then you want to avoid, this is a highly controversial or highly debated issue. When you use highly, that really, that's kind of inflammatory language. You want to avoid inflammatory language. You know, controversial, hot topic. Again, that's inflammatory. You want to avoid that. And then avoid proverbs and cliches like old is gold or health is wealth. They don't mean anything. They do not mean anything. And when I hear health is wealth, what do you mean by that? Okay. That's why I ask myself when I hear those types of phrases. So we want to avoid those. Next thing we want to avoid is slang. Remember, the essay is formal speech. Slang is informal. And then we want to avoid contractions. Can't, won't, wouldn't, those type of those things. Essays, again, formal language does not use contractions. So we want to avoid those. And then abbreviations such as etc. and IE. We want to avoid etc. and IE, and any other abbreviations. Rather than writing abbreviation, spell the word out, okay? Spell the word out. Now, moving on, using, and this is our final issue, using research to support your ideas, right? First of all, the examiners cannot check research, so they don't know whether it's true or not. They really want you to use real life examples to illustrate your ideas, okay? And this shows that you can really convey the idea when you use a real life example. So, and you can use the following types of examples. country. You can talk about your country, what goes on in your country or in your community or your state, wherever you live in, okay? You can talk about family, but keep families in general. For instance, Indian families generally do blank. Jobs, you can talk about jobs. So if you're working, you can talk about your profession in a general way. And same thing, if you're a student, you can talk about your experience as a student in a general way. And so that's what you wanted. Those are the type of examples you want. And again, you can talk about yourself, talk about family, talk about friends, but make it general. Make it general. Don't make it about you or your friends, or make them general. Okay, now, so that's it. So to review, you want to avoid the following. So by avoiding the following here: insufficient, inappropriate paragraphing, partially addressing the task, presenting an unclear position, use of first and second person speech, spelling errors, using inappropriate memorized language, phrases, cliches, and idioms, and using research to support your thesis, you will be on the way to score 7 bands or higher, okay? Because a lot of these, if you don't do some, if you do some of these, you won't score maybe higher than, you won't score any more than 4, 5, or 6 bands, depending on the problem. So no paragraphing, you will not score 4 bands above in coherence and cohesion. If you use inappropriate memorized language, you won't score more than 5 in lexical resources. Same thing with if you use research and support to support your thesis, you won't score more than 6, I believe, in task achievement. So that's it. I want to thank you guys for joining me. We're kind of running out of time. Join me. Be sure to follow us on YouTube, here on YouTube. Watch my videos, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook for free tips and strategies on IELTS. Make sure to like, comment, and share this video. And now I want to talk briefly about my IELTS Tutor. Now, my IELTS Tutor is the premium online training service. This is because not only do you get all these things, but you get more attention than you would in, say, a brick and mortar institution where you're sitting in a class with 20 to 30 people. You're getting more attention than you would. And another thing here is because you get that more attention, the trainer, the coach, can focus in more easily, more quickly on your needs, where you are lacking, where you are strong, and then design a customized study plan. And that's one of the things that we do to help you succeed. And so that's what we do. And so these are the primary tutors with my IELTS Tutor, myself, Nana Chavra, and Ms. Amita. Together we have around 30 years of experience, and we have literally helped thousands of students achieve their goals. We're IDP certified, and we have the experience. We have the knowledge, and we're here to help you achieve your goals. And here are some recent goals: 7.5, 8, and we always target 8.8 bands for all of our students. Every student who comes to us, we target 8 bands, and we work hard. We're committed to achieving that goal. And so what we do is we do everything we can to help you achieve that goal. And this means that your bands are our responsibility. That's right. Your bands are our responsibility. So that's it for today. I want to thank you guys for joining us. Again, be sure to watch my videos here on YouTube, on the My IELTS Tutor channel. Subscribe. Also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. You will see more videos from me and from other tutors from My IELTS Tutor. And I will see you next time, next Wednesday, 5 o'clock. And you guys take care. Bye for now.